everybody. Gail from Gail's Bookish Things, obviously, because that's the channel you're watching, but that's just what I say. So I wanted to share with you today something a little bit different, and that is a mini book review. I won't go into great detail about these because once you start talking about them, it's easy to start saying too much. But these are 3 books that we have done in our book club. So the most, let me start with the furthest back. Several months ago we did The Ragged Edge of Night. And if you like World War II era books, I really recommend this one. In some ways it reminded me of Hannah Kristen's The Nightingale. But this is, I would say, like a much lighter version of that. That one is much longer, much more detail, a lot more intense moments. This is more from the angle of people who were not liking what was happening in Germany with the Nazi movement and were in their own way trying to resist it and yet also carry on with lives. So this is a rural village. It's based on a true story, which makes it super exciting. The heroism then is so much more meaningful, I think. Although I imagine a lot of the stories in fiction are based on true type of events. But I really liked reading this. It's got a bit of a, I don't even want to call it a love story or romance, but there is a relationship that is growing throughout the story, but it's not at all the main theme, but it's kind of a little sweet touch to it. So really recommend this. I loved reading this book. And well, I'll stop with that. I want to say more. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Now, my daughter's an avid reader, and I asked her what she thought. She reads so much all the time, and she loves The Nightingale, and she thought this was good. She didn't like it nearly as well. And I would say, sure, The Nightingale's better, but because of the length and numerous storylines going on, this is kind of focused on this one particular family. But very good, very heartwarming. I think that you would enjoy it, especially if you like that era. And I do. I'm a big fan of books and stories from that time because I feel like there's so much heroism, and where the worst of mankind was showing forth, the best of mankind was also showing forth with trying to hide people and rescue people and preserve art and heritage. So, good story. And then after that, I think we read this like last winter. We used to meet monthly. Now we go like every 6 weeks, so we have a little more time to get our books and read them. This one we did fairly recently, The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek, also based on true events. Eleanor Roosevelt wanted to establish a literacy program when her husband was president. And so what happened is there were several women who would ride horseback or donkeyback or hike to remote areas in Kentucky is where this one took place, but I think it was a lot of rural kind of southern areas. It's been a little bit, yeah, this is Kentucky, 1930s. So anyway, it was a true movement. They were trying to bring books to people who were more remote, less likely to get into town and take advantage of reading. So this book features a young woman named Cussie, who was a bookwoman. Now, the twist in the whole story is she had a skin disease, or actually it's a blood disorder, and they were called the blue people because they looked blue. Their skin took on a blue hue because the blood was not being oxygenated properly. So their skin turned blue, and there was a certain amount of racism that went with that, and maybe not so much race, but prejudice due to being blue. So it's all about her learning to deal with her condition. She has to face the death of people she cared for. But throughout the time, she really took her job seriously. She was very devoted to her patrons. She went out of the way to reach out to struggling people within that setting, even though her own condition and that of her father was by no means an abundant lifestyle. But she was very giving, very generous. And there's a little kind of some fun little stuff that happens amidst the tragedy. So the only thing I would say about this book that I didn't like was kind of how it ended. And that can sound like, oh my gosh, you read the whole book and you don't like the ending. Let me just say, if you've read or watched Tess of the Dubervilles, that was terrible. I watched the movie. I was sick. I stayed up late. I had 2 little kids, and it ended terribly. I was like, how can you do that? This isn't that kind of bad ending. This is just, I would have written it differently. But it was a hopeful ending. It was a positive ending, but not quite how I would like to have seen the story go. But definitely worth a read. Super good book, and a really unusual kind of situation. So it was very unique of a read. So this is a definite interesting and good read. I haven't really been telling you about page numbers, but this one about 291 pages. And the fun thing is too, there's some pictures in the back of these actual book women and areas where the public library service reached out with their project there. Very, very interesting. Not something you hear a lot about. So I like a lot of Civil War. It was fun to read something that was a little bit earlier in the previous century, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. Great main characters, supporting characters too in these. The last one I read, and we are discussing it this week actually at our club, was this Book of Lost Friends by Lisa Wingate. Another book that people have talked about is this other one of hers, Before We Were Yours. I have not read or listened to the audio version of that, but I heard it was also excellent. To start out with this, the cover is this super cover jacket is really neat. As you can see, it's got the appearance of being a weathered and tattered book. It even has a little bit of texture embossed on it. So this goes back and forth from post-Civil War era to I think it was like the later 1980s. So you have 2 different stories. You have the story of the main character, her name was Hanny, and she's sharecropping with her adopted type family, and it's sort of her adventure on going with the former miss of the house that she used to have to serve as a young girl. Now she's a free woman, young woman. It's their adventure and a half-sister adventure, and they are trying to track down their father's legal documents. So Hanny's wanting to do that to protect her free status and her earning the property after working 10 years status, and then the other 2 half-sisters are trying to protect their inheritance. And then it goes forward to I think the main character here, her name is Benny, that's her nickname. She is a teacher in a hard-to-reach area where the students are kind of indifferent and the school system is suffering, and it's sort of how she captures their attention by visiting their heritage, going back in their town. So the modern day or more current history, the town was kind of founded off of the old plantation owner's property. So there's a weaving in of stories and characters in the post-Civil War. Their ancestors are descendants, I guess it would be, are some of the people in Benny's certain circumstance, our current circumstances. So very interestingly written. I don't sometimes like that back and forth, but what was fun with this is, okay, you're reading the Hanny's story, and then all of a sudden you're going to Benny's story, and you're like, oh, but I wanted to know what was happening with Hanny. And then you get into Benny's story, and then it switches over and goes back to Hanny's, and it sounds like it would be annoying, but you are really drawn into each portion of the story as you read it. So both are well written and intriguing storylines. There's some relationship struggles, a lot of things that end up in being very meaningful long term. And I felt maybe my one critique of this book, so well written, really not a critique. There's a little bit of a story with Benny that I feel is sort of tacked on at the end, and I don't feel like her personal struggle was. So she has an outward struggle, like trying to reach the community and these students, but then she has some things that happened in her past, and that's like barely touched upon. So to me, it didn't feel like it was really a part of her story that much. I didn't feel like that was maybe well enough developed, but on the other hand, her current situation was such a neat, enthusiastic, purposeful, focused, intentional effort that to me that was enough. So anyway, but still awesome. And could I ever even think of imagining writing a book like this? No. So I just pick apart little details just in a way of observation. But all three of these, if you're looking for a nice summer read, when I say nice, I just mean they're not too lengthy, and they're all very interesting. They're really good, but they're not nice and hunky-dory fluffy fairy tales, nothing like that. They're very substantial stories, very intriguing, but easily gotten through in, I don't know, it depends on how readily you read, but that wouldn't take any time at all, really, to get through any of these three books. So I will wrap it up for now. I've yacked on long enough, and I keep saying I'm going to be brief. That's very, very hard for me. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you're reading this summer. I'm always open for suggestions for our book club, and I would love to hear your ideas. Or if you have read any of these, let me know what your thoughts were. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.